Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Sunday. I'm Phil Sanchez. We're talking this week about Indiana's legislature. Lawmakers gathered Tuesday for Organization Day to prepare for the session that begins in January. And for the first time, it will include a black leader of a legislative caucus. State Senator Greg Taylor of Indianapolis will lead Senate Democrats. He served in the Senate for the past 12 years. His election comes as Indiana confronts the COVID-19 crisis, and with Democrats holding only 11 of the 50 Senate seats. State Senator Greg Taylor, good to see you. Thank you for taking some time. First, we want to talk about your status right now. You're the first African-American to lead a General Assembly caucus. How does that make you feel, and how important is that for Central Indiana, specifically Indianapolis?
Well, let me start by saying I had no idea that I was actually going to be the first. I had assumed that had happened already before. But when I think about it, I have a huge responsibility, and that responsibility is going to be changing the dynamics of how we look at leadership in the state of Indiana as a whole. And I've got a lot of friends who have congratulated me on the position. And they also brought up the fact that this is a game changer when it comes to leadership. So I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm going to do my best to represent the Senate minority group that I'm leading right now. And I just hope that it makes Indiana better off totally.
So one of the first things that you're calling for is a redistricting. How would that look? How do you plan on making that work?
Well, let me start. Redistricting is a very complex matter. And it's one of those things that we've been working on in the Senate minority for a long time. We asked for an independent panel to do to make suggestions. That was thrown away. It was passed by the Senate twice. And now I have a bill that just would put some standards in place, some standards like not being able to draw districts based on where a legislator lives. I think the Hoosiers in the state of Indiana deserve that. We should not be choosing our constituents. Our constituents should be choosing us. And right now, with the way we draw our districts, that's exactly how it happens. We actually choose our constituents.
What's the likelihood of this coming to fruition, in your opinion?
If I had to put a percentage on it right now, I would say it's 50-50. Now, that's an optimistic outlook because in the past, it just hasn't been happening. But I think the voters of Indiana are getting more and more fed up with the polarization of politics. And that's really what this is about. I'm a Democrat, but I can tell you I represent a lot of Republicans, both in my district and around the state. I made this point the other day. I was raised in a very conservative town just north of here called Marion, Indiana. And I still consider that a place that I respect and love. Now, politically, I probably wouldn't be a part of that community. But at the end of the day, I care about what happens to the people who live there. And so when I think about legislation, I'm just not thinking about my current constituents. I'm thinking about people in the city of Marion. And absolutely, that's how every legislator should think.
Setting a state budget, obviously going to be a top priority. Are you expecting any cuts? I would imagine probably going to have to make some with COVID. Your thoughts?
One of the things that I do know is that the state of Indiana will not feel the impact of the loss of revenue that we've had. And on that, from that standpoint, from a budgetary projection standpoint, we are actually ahead of schedule based on our projections. Now, that's basically a guess of what we're going to be, so we're ahead of it. But in the next biennial budget, we will see some flatlining of some departments. I expect there to be some hiring freezes. But, we've all got to work together, not only at the federal level, but the state level, to make sure that we return to as much as normal as possible. And part of that, getting back to our very robust revenue from the state of Indiana. So, yeah, we're going to have to make some tough decisions. And I just hope that everybody just has some patience and understanding that there's just a lot of things we're not going to be able to do.
That being said, how can lawmakers like yourself help people who are unemployed or small businesses that might be struggling?
You know, I brought this up in my speech on the floor. At some point, we're going to have to recognize that the business community and government both benefit from an educated workforce. And I believe right now is the perfect time for us to focus on re-educating and actually enhancing the ability of workers in the state of Indiana. I was shocked to find out that over 500,000 of our adults, working age adults, don't even have a high school diploma or equivalency. And we've got a project that's coming online here in Indianapolis that actually is going to hire people like that. And while at the same time, while they're working, learning a new skill, the employer is going to actually pay for them to get their high school equivalency. Not only that, but if those people want to continue their education, they're going to help them pay for that. So in my opinion, Indiana should become a partner with business. We both have the same interest. We both need educated and hardworking Hoosiers, like we all know we have in this state, but they just have to be retooled, if you will, on how the next generation is going to survive and earn a living wage.
And of course, the reason for the retooling and possibly some of the cuts is COVID and the virus. In your estimation, has the state or the governor done enough to protect Hoosiers and to also maybe weather the burn?
I really wish that this pandemic has not become politicized, because I think it handcuffs a lot of the things that the governor can do. You know, local communities have the best ideas on what their community should be. Now, that's one point that I agree with the governor. However, we have to provide guidance that is non-political, that says, hey, safety is first. And I think when you allow communities that are contiguous, I mean, the spread of this virus is not just Indianapolis and central Indiana, it's the rest of the state. We have to be cognizant that we need a state plan that says everybody's going to do the minimum. Now, if you go further than that, then that's fine. But I think the governor should actually give a minimum and then allow the locals to do more if they want.
Okay, so we talked about potential cuts. What about teachers possibly getting a raise? I know it's been talked about for years. Do you anticipate that happening this session? If so, how much?
Teachers, I'm going to tell you something right now. To all the teachers out there, thank you. They have been put in a predicament. And this is part of why it's so frustrating to me. We kicked the can down the road far enough now where we're in a situation where teachers are doing twice the amount of work and still don't have that pay raise. And that's our fault. So we kicked the can down the road every year for the last 4 years and said, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Now, we don't even have the resources to assist local communities in having teacher pay raises. So no, I don't think it's going to happen, and it's our fault.
State Senator Greg Taylor, congratulations on your new title. We appreciate you taking some time, sir.
Thank you for having me, and have a blessed holiday and be safe.
Coming up, trying to stop the virus spread here in Indiana, the two Republican lawmakers who want the governor's emergency orders thrown out altogether. That's next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics. Two Republican lawmakers want the General Assembly to throw out all of Governor Eric Holcomb's emergency orders over the coronavirus. Representatives Kurt Knisely and John Jacob filed a resolution. It says the state of emergency is no longer necessary to protect the people of Indiana, and that Hoosiers have been educated and informed on how to protect themselves and their families from COVID-19. It must still pass both the House and Senate. Now, we invited both lawmakers to come on to discuss their resolution. A spokesperson said Representative Knisely is on vacation and unavailable. Meanwhile, Representative Jacob, who was just elected to office, sent us the following statement. My position is articulated in the resolution. Please read the resolution, which we have already done. Also, I believe each person, including myself, needs to repent and trust in Jesus Christ alone for salvation from sin and its eternal punishment. And let's welcome in Eric Berman, State House reporter for our partners at WIBC Radio. Eric, good to see you, sir. What did we learn from Organization Day Tuesday that could give us some hints for the session that opens up in January?
Well, I don't think we learned too much that we didn't know already in terms of policy. It's going to be a virus-dominated session. They've got a budget to write. That budget is going to be tight because of the pandemic, but the leaders in the House and Senate reaffirmed that. I think one thing we did learn is that there's going to be more adherence to coronavirus precautions than some had feared. You know, the big story going into the session or into Organization Day was there is no mask requirement for legislators. There's requirements for media and for staff, but not for legislators. In the end, you only had two members, both Republicans in the House, who weren't wearing masks. Everybody else was, and that includes several people who have been somewhat critical or skeptical of the governor's emergency orders. So
well, that's the perfect segue to our next question. Let's talk about those two lawmakers. We talked about them earlier in the show as well. They're pushing back on the governor's virus orders. How much will we hear about that from the General Assembly?
Based on Organization Day, not a lot. They don't appear to have a lot of cavalry behind them. That they are just the two, Representatives Nisley and Jacob. Nobody else signed on to that resolution yet. That's not to say that that couldn't happen, but they're going to have to get a committee hearing. They're going to have to get it through committee. There doesn't seem to be any indication that there's support for just ending the emergency. Now, Speaker Todd Houston did say that there are talks ongoing behind the scenes on maybe some changes to the emergency powers law, but nothing that would cut off the governor completely, much less the current declaration.
In other news, what are the key issues that we should be watching for this session? We know that the budget is going to be the top thing that really needs to get done, right?
Yeah, the budget, as we say every 2 years, the budget is the one bill that they have to pass. If it weren't for the budget, they could just decide to adjourn on the first day if they wanted to. But the budget has to pass, and this year is that every 10 years time where they also have to pass new maps for the legislative districts, both the state legislature and the congressional districts. There is a fail-safe if they can't get that done, that there's a special committee that would form and just do it for them. But that won't happen. They'll get it done. Those two bills will happen by the time of adjournment at the end of April. Beyond that, you know, they're going to get less done this year than usual. Again, the pandemic has changed things. But one subset of those discussions is what happens with school funding, not just what happens as part of the budget, but they've got to pass a bill to make sure schools don't get penalized in their funding for going to e-learning because of the pandemic.
Eric Berman, thank you for taking some time. Thank you for, I know you're pretty busy, so we appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Coming up, Georgia declares Joe Biden its presidential winner after a hand recount. So what should happen now in President Trump's fight over the election results? We put that question to two of Indiana's top political leaders next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics on this Sunday. We welcome in this morning two of our favorites, Republican Pete Seat and Democrat Drew Anderson. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Let's start by talking the results of the presidential race. And Pete, I want to start with you. Georgia has certified Biden the winner there. Judges in several states have thrown out lawsuits alleging that election fraud took place or other problems as well. Is it time, Pete, for the president to just let the transition begin and let Joe Biden take over?
I'll say what I said last week on this show, and that is the Biden team should get access to detailed intelligence reports, to transition office space, to secure communications, because the answer is yes. We've not seen these court cases yield results. If there is evidence of electoral fraud, let's see it. I think we all want to see it. Election fraud happens. It's happened here in Indiana. People have gone to jail here in Indiana because of it, but we've not seen proof of the systemic, widespread fraud that we're hearing about. And just saying something is true because you want it to be true doesn't make it true. It's time to move on.
In your opinion, Pete, and a fair point, of course, is this hurting the presidency or the Republican Party?
Well, we are going to be a divided nation regardless of the outcome of this election. People don't know how to lose anymore. This doesn't help that from happening and from people moving forward and accepting the results of the election. But I think we'll be ultimately fine.
Drew, I want to get you in here for a moment. Why hasn't Joe Biden been more forceful to say, hey, I won? Put his foot down.
I mean, he has been forceful, and he has said that he's won. He had a speech after it was declared that he was the winner and the president-elect. And I will say this is the one thing I think that Pete and I are going to agree on, which is it's time to move on. Joe Biden's the winner, and Americans don't like sore losers. And I think that's just what we need to leave it as. And we need to make sure that Joe Biden could safely transition his new government into the role, because as we have seen in the past, whenever a new government doesn't have the time to actually transition itself into power, then it causes a national security. And that's something that I'm sure we all agree that we don't want.
Well, let me rephrase the question here, Drew. Would you like to see him be more forceful? Maybe a little more aggressive?
I mean, it's not Joe Biden's job to placate to a child that throws tantrums. That's the Republican Party. And the Republican Party, throughout the course of 5 years, has given the current president his time to throw his tantrums and to throw a fit. And their inability to actually hold him accountable and to tell him that it's time to accept failure and a loss, that's going to actually probably drag down the party a little bit, unless if they course correct and do it right away.
Well, let's turn the conversation back to local politics here, Pete. I know that you've written about the future of Democrats in the state. Your thoughts this morning?
You know, I was struck by some comments made earlier this week by outgoing Chairman John Zodi and by a potential candidate to be the next chairman, Josh Owens, former gubernatorial candidate. They both said that the Democrat Party in Indiana needs to build. They didn't say rebuild, they said build. And that is a really important word choice. To think that the Democratic Party in the state is so far down the line of where they should be, that they're just building as opposed to rebuilding, is a problem. And I think, look, I'm a Republican, I get it. It's weird that I'm trying to give them free advice here, but it's not enough to change the manager, which is what they will do with the new chairman. If the players aren't producing on the field, you're not going to win the game. So they need to look up and down, and they need to be concerned about libertarians who themselves want to become a major party.
That's a fair point, Drew. What say you?
What I say is that we actually do need to have a conversation. And I think the more people that step up for this chair race, the better. And that's just because, as we saw nationally, the more people that do bring ideas to the table and do bring their vision to how to create a better and more inclusive Indiana Democratic Party that's successful on the ground, is by making sure all voices are heard. And so while my friend on the other side is going to overanalyze small words, we're going to actually come together and figure out how to meet voters where they are, as opposed to hoping that they understand our values, because as evidence shows with the Donald Trump win, those national talking points don't work in Indiana. And what my hope is that moving forward, the Indiana Democratic Party could build a brand that's independent from the national narrative.
Less than a minute left, guys. Let me just jump in here. I want to get your take on a different topic here. We've had two Republicans, we talked about them earlier on, that are hoping to overturn the governor's virus orders. And we're looking at significant Republican infighting. Drew, your thoughts, and I want to get Pete's response too, again, quickly.
Well, and this is the future of the Republican Party. It's because of 5 years of Donald Trump flaming the fans of the ultimate fringe on the right. And it's not surprising to see these people overreach and to have these moments of power. And Pete and I hope Pete agrees that this is unbecoming of any elected official, has no part in our process. But the problem is that while Governor Holcomb and Houston will do their best to try to keep them in line, it's kind of too late, because we've had 5 years of the Republican Party nationally and federally not holding people accountable.
Pete, real quick.
Yeah, I don't think there's significant infighting. You have a small handful of legislators who are very vocal on social media. You also have legislators who privately say they're grateful the governor didn't call them back in for a special session and took whatever small amount.
We'll have to leave it there, guys. We're running out of time. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. Have a great Sunday.